A bat. This isn't a joke, this is a true bat. This is called a tube-nosed bat. And he's called tube-nosed because when you look at his really big, elongated nostrils, my gosh, he's got like snorkels on the end of his face here. These tubes that come out, elongate on his nose, actually help this bat breathe when he's engaged in eating. This is a particular type of bat that is a fruit-eating species. He's not as cute as the other fruit-eating bat we saw, but nevertheless, he's considered a flying fox, even though he doesn't look at all like a dog. And he consumes large quantities of very juicy fruits. He likes fruit that's so juicy it's virtually close to almost rotten. You know how when fruit gets really, really ripe, it gets real squishy and the juices seem to all come out and almost ferment? Well, this bat loves that fruit in that condition, okay? And because he eats it so robustly, he's a real piggy when he eats, he gets juice all over him. We've seen these bats eat in captivity as well as in the wild, and the amount of juice and fruit and pulp that they get on their bodies is astronomical. They look like they're just a little pig. They spend about half the time that they're awake during the day eating, and the other half of the time grooming all the food off of their fur because they're so messy. So they do a lot of grooming. This nostril keeps the fruit juice out of his face. If you look, he's got a pretty blunt face and a really wide mouth. He can open his mouth really big and he pushes his face right down into the fruit. These nostrils, we think, were an adaptation to being able to continue to breathe while he's eating. It's kind of like thinking like, you know, if you love spaghetti, you just put your face in the plate and you can still breathe with snorkels, you know, while eating spaghetti. My husband looked like that. But anyway, this bat is an interesting little bat. He's got golden coloration. This tube-nosed bat, there's a lot of pictures on the internet of this bat. If you guys want to take a look at some of the other pictures, there's some pretty cool wings. He's got golden colored wings. But I want you to do something for me right now with this particular picture. I want you to close one eye, and I want you to put your fingers or your hand over that bat's ears while you're looking at his face. Block those ears out with your hand. What does he look like to you? If he didn't have those big old ears sticking out, what would he look like?
Monkey.
Who said a monkey? You're absolutely right. Truth is that bats are not rodents. Another misconception about bats, another commonly held belief, is that bats are members of the rodent family. In many nations, the word for bat actually means flying mouse, bald-headed mouse. There's lots and lots of nations that actually incorporate the word mouse or rodent in the name of the bat. And it's not true. We know today through genetic testing and sequencing the genomes on these species that they are not related in any way, ever have been related to the rodent family. Now, it's not that I don't love mice and rats. They're very smart animals, and I think they're really neat. But bats are not in that family group. Bats actually belong to the larger group of mammals that we refer to as primates. Great apes, monkeys, chimpanzees, people, lemurs, and bats. So it's true for me to stand here and tell you that you and I are more closely related to these bats than they are to just about any other thing. There's not very much difference, except they can fly and we're locked on the ground. But they have an opposing thumb. They have 4 fingers that make up a hand. They can grasp and hold things with their hands just like other primates can. They're dexterous, they use tools, they're smart, they live a long, long life like other types of primates. Bats in this species group live between 30 and 50 years. Little tiny bats like Boris here under my collar live 25 years. This is a common bat here in Florida, and the average lifespan of this bat is 25 years. That's amazing for such a tiny mammal. And to put that in perspective so we can all kind of understand how big a deal that really is, if all mammals on this planet, including us, were exactly the same size, there are 19 kinds of mammals that would live longer than people, and 18 of those are bats. So they live a very long time proportionate to their size. They reproduce very, very slowly. Most species, including fruit bats in the tropics, only have 1 or possibly 2 babies a year. Some have twins like people, but single births are much more common. There are some species, like the freetail here under my collar, that only have 1 baby every other year because the pup, when it's born, is so big and takes up so much of the mother's time and energy to rear that she skips a year between pregnancies. This is a feature of other primates, that natural spacing of offspring that we see in other primates. So it's not a surprise to any of us who've worked with bats to know that today we absolutely can scientifically say bats are primates, not rodents. Not a surprise to me at all. All their wonderful other features. So there's really teeny bats in the world. This is the smallest bat on the planet. This is called the Kitty's hawk-nosed bat. Some children will know this bat as the bumblebee bat. There's a better book written about it in most children's libraries and school libraries. The bumblebee bat lives in Southeast Asia, and it was an unknown species until about 15 or 18 years ago. It's actually the smallest bat so far as we know today on the planet. Its wingspan is about 4.5 inches, or about the distance between the one side of your palm to the other. And that's when it's fully flighted and going as fast as it can. Now, I know you're going to kid me, you're going to not believe me, but this isn't really a Chamber of Commerce moment, so excuse me, but there's roaches in Florida there in this bat. And we've all seen them. We don't show them to the tourists, but we've all seen them. So the deal is that this is just the tiniest bat, but it's also qualified as the smallest mammal on the planet. Because its weight is what qualifies it for that. The biomass, the weight of this little tiny bat is less than a penny. An adult bat, a flying mammal, weighs less than a penny. So later today, if you put a penny in your hand, you can feel how light that feels. Shoot, you can put a penny in your pocket or in your shoe, and you can go around all day long and forget it's there and throw it in the laundry, and you won't even remember it's there until it starts clanging around in the dryer, right? And then your mom will say something to you that won't be very nice and messes the dryer up. But the fact is that pennies are real easy to misplace. Shoot, pennies don't mean anything anymore in our culture. I mean, they're all over the ground. If somebody went around every day and picked up all the pennies, they could probably retire. Well, maybe not, but they get close. So this bat, I want you to see how small it really is. I want you to stick your finger up, your thumb up straight up in the air. Everybody do that, and I want you to bend it over and make that little L shape like you see here. Make a little flat spot on the top of your thumb between the knuckle and the tip of your thumb. This adult bat would sit right there on that little shelf. The whole bat would be right there on that little shelf. That's how tiny this little mammal is. An amazing little creature. Of course, for everything in other nature's world that's little, there's also something covered that's big. This is the world's largest bat species. These are called golden collared or golden crowned fruit bats. This is a large male. This particular individual is a large male. It's a study animal in the Philippine Islands. You can see there in the Philippines that these people build these bamboo structures so the bats can hang on them. Bats are considered good fortune. Not too many years ago, not too many decades ago, the Filipinos and a lot of people, indigenous peoples in these Pacific islands where these bats predominantly live, would hunt these animals for food. They were hunting them and eating them. The deal is these bats live about between 60 and 80 years, we think. This one's 50 years old already and he's still going strong. So we're still working on the actual lifespan. But their wingspans on this particular bat was 7 feet. From the tip of one wing to the tip of the other, when he's airborne, is 7 feet. Now, that's the same distance as from the floor here to the top of the door jamb. Okay? So imagine that coming, flying home. They come in for a landing. These are fruit-eating species. They are very gentle. They're very docile. You can see this bat's hanging out in the middle of the open during the day, sound asleep. His little eyes, it's hard for you to see in the picture, but his little eyes are down here, these little slits, and they're just pressed, completely shut tight. He's sound asleep. They wrap their wings around themselves typically when they're sleeping like this so that they can stay warm. Because bats like to be warm. They're warm-blooded mammals, so they want to keep their body temperature in, even in tropical climates. This bat eats nothing but fruit, and they are endangered. They are considered endangered, as most bats are. And anybody want to guess how much he weighs? Remember, the tiniest bat in the world weighs less than a penny. What do you think the biggest bat in the world weighs? What do you think?
10 pounds.
10? Anybody else? What do you think?
8 pounds.
8 pounds? Anyone else? Okay, this is the largest one we know about, and he weighed 4.4 pounds.
Wow.
So you can see that if the indigenous people were hunting these animals for food, they'd have to hunt a lot of them to get a meal. I made a chicken for dinner last week, and it was a whole lot bigger than 4 pounds. So, you know, this is a very light mammal. Even though he looks big to us with our eyes and those wings are massive, he's very light because he needs to be able to get airborne. If he weighed as much as many people think he does, he'd never get off the ground. That he'd be like us, a grounded mammal. So, there you go. So bats, most of the bats in the world, as I've already mentioned, like insects. They're about their own weight in insects every single night, which is a big deal. A bat Boris's size, for example, and I'll walk around and show you Boris here while we're talking about him. No touching, just looking, okay? Maybe we could turn the light back on just for this little part. I I've had the lights turned down just so that we can see the screen a little bit. But we'll show you Boris here. Boris is a Brazilian free-tailed bat. He's one of our native bat species and our most common bat in our state. Boris has had a wing injury, so he's not able to fly any longer. So he's one of our education ambassadors. He's called a free-tail because he's got a little tail that hangs down past the tail membrane. There's a whole family group of bats called free-tails, and Boris is just one of those species. So there you go. So now Boris, if he were an insect-eating bat, and he is, if he were in the wild like this bat in the picture, Boris would eat about 5,000 bugs every night, just to sustain his body weight, just to stay alive. 5,000 bugs a night is over 1 million insects a year. Every bat in Florida is eating about 1 million insects every year. Boris lives in a family group that we call a colony. This is a social bat, this is a colonizing bat. Most of the bats in Florida live in colonies, live in family groups that anywhere from a few hundred bats up to several thousand. So if you've got a bat house like the one in the front of the room on your property, and it's full of bats at capacity, that'll hold 300 bats like Boris. If you had 300 bats in there, now you're getting 1 million insects a year times 300 for each bat, okay? So you can see how the insect control can really add up. The other part of that equation is it's not just the insects that Boris is eating that's the big deal. Every bug he eats is an insect that doesn't get to reproduce. So now, when you add that into the equation, Boris's species is controlling literally billions and billions of insects every single year, for free, without pesticides, chemicals, and toxins, without the expense, without having to pay extra taxes for it or any of the rest of that. So it turns out to be a very big deal when you start talking about an individual bat times all the millions of bats that are out in the environment. He's adorable. Oh, he's waking up now, he's talking. His little mouth moving. Now look, if you take a look at the picture of the bat here in the screen, you can see that his mouth is open, okay? His teeth are showing. Because bats echolocate when they're hunting, and they make that sound verbally through their mouth, they have to open their mouth to make the sound come out. It's no different than you and I speaking and talking to each other. If we didn't open our mouths, we wouldn't be able to be understood, would we? We would be enunciating the words and no one would understand us. Bats are doing the same thing. Their mouths are open because they're sending out echolocation calls verbally, anywhere from 20 to 200 calls per second. And every single thing out there that sound wave runs out and hits, it sends an echo back to the bat's ear. He's processing that data. All right? This bat is actually hunting this little moth, and he will get it. His mouth is open because he's echolocating. He's got a mouthful of sharp, tiny little teeth so he can grab this bug in midair. So a lot of people believe, for a long time, and many people still today believe, that bats are aggressive because of pictures like this. Bats are not aggressive. They're bashful, they're shy, they're what we refer to in the world of biology as cryptic. They're hard to study. That's why this program is called The Secret World, because bats are very shy animals. They have a lot of natural predators. During the daytime hours, they hide from natural predators like snakes, hawks, and owls at night. Daytime birds will hunt bats. Woodpeckers, crows, blackbirds of all kinds, blue jays will eat bats, mockingbirds will eat bats. So there's a lot of different kinds of animals out there in the environment every day that want to catch a bat and eat it. They must taste really good because everybody wants to eat bats for lunch. The deal is they've adapted the ability to fly only at night because of their excellent vision, and they can hunt insects unimpeded by other competition. There's not a lot of birds out there hunting insects at night, overnight, like bats do. And they're also safe from their natural predators. So it makes sense that they would be a nocturnal animal. And it makes sense that they have a mouthful of very tiny, sharp little teeth for grabbing bugs in midair. And it makes sense that they have to open their mouth like this to make those verbal calls, to find their prey. So are they an aggressive animal? No. They're simply engaging in verbalization. Here's the deal. You're a tree trimmer. You're out there on a ladder. You're hacking off at a tree. You come across a bat hanging in the tree or in the Spanish moss. You wake that poor little bat up out of a dead sleep, and it goes, and it's moving its mouth and its teeth are showing. It's talking to you. It's not being aggressive and trying to bite you. But every tree trimmer I know freaks out, jumps off the ladder. You know, people get hurt a lot of times because they don't understand or the risk, or they have a natural fear of something, and they end up getting hurt even worse. So be aware that if you're a tree trimmer, if you're a roofer, if you know someone in your family that's a roofer, they need to be aware that these animals are not only probably going to be present in those locations, but they're protected by state wildlife law, and it's illegal to kill them or hurt them. Okay? So if you know someone who's having their roof replaced, and who isn't these days, the deal is you got to make sure that they have an inspection done first to make sure there's no bats in that roof. If there's bats in the building, then they're going to have to be humanely evicted before the roof comes off. It's just one more layer, okay? This is a picture of another insect eater. This is one of the ones in the desert southwest here in the United States. This is called a pallid bat. He doesn't catch insects on the fly, although he can. Typically, most of his prey is on the ground because it's arid. He's eating a poisonous scorpion here. They also eat toxic centipedes. Lots of different kinds of insects in the desert, on the floor, in the sand and the gravel. And these little pallid bats are one of the few species in North America that can actually get airborne from flat off the ground. They have a really enlarged back hip joint and larger muscles in their back end, and they've evolved the ability to get airborne just by keeping in the air. Most species cannot do that. They have to climb to a vertical surface, climb up nice and high, and then let go and get airborne that way. They can't actually get airborne from the ground. So that's a little bit different this one. Here's our little pollinator. Remember the guy that had the little nose leaf on his horn, like a little horn on his nose, and it says like a garbage can lid? Here he is. This is Leptonectarus yerba, one of my favorite pollinating bats. You can see how small he is compared to the cactus flower. He's flying over and he's going to hover over the flower because he doesn't want to get involved in all this down here. So like a hummingbird, he's going to hover. He's going to stick his face inside the flower. And remember I talked about the pollen layer? Look at how extended out this ring of pollen is on this flower. This is the way these plants reproduce. And they aren't messing around. They've got that male and female pieces of pollen out there right on the edge of the top of the flower. So anyone who comes along to pollinate this plant is going to get into those, mix those pollen grains, and cause this plant to produce a fruit with seeds. All right, it's a very serious thing for these particular plants. So far as we know, these are the only known pollinators of these large cactus in the desert southwest in the U.S. and in Mexico. We don't think there's anybody else out pollinating these, especially at night. This flower opens only at night for these bats. So a very important animal for these plants to produce fruits. He's going to put his face down inside the flower, but he's going to hover so the shoulders aren't going to allow him to get in. And his head is only going to go down about this far, but the nectar is way down here in the bottom, way down at the bottom of the flower bract. Anybody know how he's going to get that nectar? What's he going to do? What's he going to do?
He's going to use his tongue.
He is. He's going to stick out his very, very, very long tongue. This bat has one of the longest tongues in the entire world, proportionate to its size. His tongue is longer than his entire body. If I were this bat, and I'm 5 feet 6 inches tall, and if I was this bat, my tongue would be 8 feet long. Come down, lay on the floor, and go out all the way halfway across the room. Long, long tongue. And that's so these bats can get the flower nectar that they're actually going for. Very important little bat. For the adults in the room, these are the only known pollinator of the blue agave cactus, which we all know is the source of good tequila. So without these bats, no more margaritas, folks. So if you enjoy a little tequila once in a while in any capacity, I don't care much.